find water underground just by wandering around with a stick. Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You Know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at stuffyoushouldknow.com or wherever books are sold.
I'm Kate Berlant.
I'm Jacqueline Novak.
We're comedians, best friends, and consumerist hogs hemorrhaging cash in the wellness world.
That's why we made a podcast, Poog, with the Big Money Players Network and iHeartRadio.
Though we suffer from no ailments, we are looking to heal.
For us, salvation lies in the next product, practice, or potion.
This is our hobby.
This is our hell.
This is our naked desire for free products. This is Poog. That's P-O-O-G. Poog on the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcasts,
or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go. We are packed today on a Tuesday live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we're on Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and right here on FS1. 1 hour from now, there's so many good teams in the NFL. I left out 5 teams from my Herd hierarchy top of next hour, and they're really good teams, and they're all capable, I think, of winning a playoff game. But we've got so many teams right now getting to the middle of a season, and you see injuries, and you see momentum, and you see good Herd hierarchy in 1 hour. Brian Kelly, Notre Dame coach on today. Maxx Crosby of the Raiders. Joy Taylor's joining me. Joy, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I see some of the weather banging around the East Coast today. Cross our fingers. We've been a little bit lucky out here right now.
Yeah,
to see what's going on with some of these NFL games. So the big story yesterday that I saw was James Harden, Houston Rockets, great scorer. He doesn't want to play for the Rockets anymore, and he wants to go play with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant in Brooklyn. And he said, listen, I don't care if you can pay me $50 million the max. I don't want to play. He'd be the first $50 million a year guy in a state with no state tax. He's like, I'm not interested. I want to win games. So the NBA has always been the league. I kind of laugh. Very rarely will you find a baseball player that will play for the absolute less. He wants the max money. Basketball players all the time are like, I want to win games. But let's start with this. How great is James Harden? I mean, he's obviously a number one. Or is he? To me, there's 4 players in the NBA. That is it. And almost every industry works like this. 4 guys, to me, that you can hand the franchise to, and they have all the components of a number one. They can score. They at least give you an effort defensively. They can lead in crucial spots. They can at times elevate others, and you can't marginalize them. They don't have a hole in their game you can always marginalize. There's 4. Kevin Durant, LeBron, Steph Curry, and Kawhi Leonard. Steph tries on defense. He's not very good. But that's why they have Klay Thompson, who's great. What about Giannis? You can marginalize Giannis. Go ahead, bro. Shoot. He plays great with a lead, not from behind. For years, you all thought Westbrook was a 1. You can marginalize him easy. Have you ever seen teams defend Westbrook? They're begging him to shoot 3-pointers. Embiid, I like him, but injuries and conditioning issues. Luka, really talented, but so far he's just a really talented young kid. He needs experience. Kyrie, he's hurt all the time. James Harden, incredibly ball-centric, barely gives an effort on the defensive end. I mean, I look up and down on all these guys that you've been trying to convince me are ones. Being a 1 is not just about scoring. It never has been. When I was a kid, George Gervin as a kid scored. He was never a 1. There's been a lot of guys in this league that scored. Daryl Morey in Houston were convinced, this guy can be the centerpiece. We'll just find guys that can play with him. And they found out they struggled to get past the first round. He's not a 1. He's the world's potentially best 2. He's not as good as Durant. He's not as dependable in a big spot. He doesn't defend like Durant. And frankly, I don't think he has the leadership skills of Durant. Durant's a 1. LeBron's a 1. Steph's a 1. And Steph is smart enough and had the self-awareness enough. When he played with another one, he backed off and let Durant be the man late in games. Just because you score a lot doesn't mean you're a one. It never has. I've been watching this league for 40 years. There's been dozens of guys who are just great scorers. But you get nothing else with it. You don't get the leadership. They won't play on the defensive end. They don't really elevate anybody beyond themselves. You can marginalize them. You know, it's a prime example. For years and years, you kept telling me AD was a one. No, he's the world's best two. He's not a leader. He can score and defend, but he doesn't really want to lead. That's not his game. When he was with a true one, LeBron, he just moved over, became the world's best two. There's nothing wrong with that. There's never been a two as good as Anthony Davis. But he was a one for years in New Orleans. They won one playoff series. You keep telling me Giannis is a one. You can marginalize him. He's a great defender and a great kid and can score. Try trailing by 10 late, 4 minutes left. You want him to have the ball? And so, you know, James Harden, give him credit. He's not just doing it as a money grab, and he's starting to realize. He wants to drive to the arena every night. Let him be the scorer, not the man. Just drive to the arena, you're going to get 31 points. There's nothing wrong with that. He's great at it. But Kevin Durant is going to be the man. And in the huddle, last shot of a game, it's going to be Kevin Durant. So, you know, when I look at Harden, everybody, you know, think about this. The last time an NBA team won a title without my four, Durant, Steph, LeBron, and Kawhi. The last time an NBA team won a title without one of those four was 2011. And if you are one of those four, like Steph, and you play with another one, then you have to have the self-awareness to go, okay, I'm Steph, I'm good, I'm not Kevin Durant, and step back. This was always the genius of D. Wade. People are like, D. Wade's a one. He is, unless he's playing with Shaq or LeBron. Then he becomes a two. You go into the huddle late in the game, and D. Wade is not getting that shot. LeBron is. And Steph goes into that huddle, and mostly, you're not getting that shot. KD is. So, you know, Houston, they, you know, made the mistake of confusing score with true one. Big difference. I've seen it for 40 years. Huge difference. All right, so I watched the Vikings. I actually bet Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football. I took my life into my own hands, and I won. And if you watched that game last night, it was like watching last Thursday, where a quarterback, Phillip Rivers, and a really good roster, the Colts, beat the Titans. And the next day you're all like, Colin, what do you make of the Colts? I make of the Colts what I make of the Vikings, you know, 5 days later. Really good roster. Colts defense is great. Vikings offensive skill players, they're loaded. And Phillip Rivers and Kirk Cousins, they can win road games, they did. They can win tough road games, Titans, Bears, they did. They can win tough road divisional rival games, they both did. But can we have an adult conversation? Phillip Rivers and Kirk Cousins can have big nights, but between Mike Zimmer's play calling, which is rigid at minimum, and Kirk Cousins' inability to really move and be dynamic, we have to have an adult conversation. If the Colts don't roll the dice at quarterback, and if the Vikings don't eventually move off Kirk Cousins, they're just going to be a tease, and nobody likes a tease. The Colts are really ready to win a championship, but they got to get more dynamic at quarterback. And the Vikings, if they can shore up their defense a little in the next draft, and Rick Spielman's an excellent general manager, are ready to win one too. They've been ready for years to win one. They were ready the previous 3 years to win one. And it doesn't mean Phillip Rivers won't get Hall of Fame votes. And it doesn't mean Kirk Cousins can't play. Kirk Cousins last night was 25 of 36, 100 quarterback rating, threw for 286 yards, very good on third down, and 35 minutes time of possession. Same numbers that Phillip Rivers had on Thursday. But the difference between Phillip Rivers and Kirk Cousins, you don't get that 3 out of 4 games or 4 out of 5, and you can with the Patrick Mahomes. So this morning, you know, I believe that both the Vikings and the Colts, It's quarterback quicksand. The Vikings gave an extension to Kirk Cousins because they had to get some cap space freed up, and so they didn't see a viable alternative on the market, so they just extended Kirk Cousins. And the Colts similarly with Jacoby Brissett, they didn't want to spend massive money for the free agent quarterback, so they brought in Phillip Rivers for a 1-year deal. They didn't see another viable alternative on the market. Both organizations have great GMs. Both organizations have one side of the ball that's loaded, the Vikings offense and the Colts defense. But if you want to become the Kansas City Chiefs, this is what the Kansas City Chiefs were for years. Really good and really well run and a really good roster and good enough to win a division and good enough to get to the playoffs. Vikings and Colts are. But you want to be a Super Bowl champ? Because the Colts and the Vikings are too good to get a top 10 pick. The GMs are too good. The coaches are very good. The rosters and points are great. But, I watched that game it was like watching the Colts. I'm like, happy for you, won some money, but this is quarterback quicksand. And I think you have to roll the dice and go big or go home in this league. Aggressive wins. I've been saying that for years in sports. And I think the Colts and the Vikings will, at the end of this season, I still contend the Vikings will make the playoffs. They'll be like the 7th seed. They're going to make the playoffs, and so are the Colts, and they're going to get beat by a better quarterback. Not by a better coach or a better roster. Not by a better offensive line. Not by a better receiving core. They'll get beat by a better quarterback. It's quicksand. Roll the dice for both. All right, coming up next. So let's just talk about this. Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving together. That's a good movie poster. But will it be a good movie? I'll give you my thoughts on that coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Yo, this is Jeezy, urban philosopher, philanthropist, and the host of the Recession Podcast, a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'll bring you raw conversations about systemic racism, mental health, life on the streets, and much more. My guests would include influential figures like Charlemagne the God, Dr. Jess, and Tony Robbins.
Martin Luther King said, a man, or you could say today a person, who hasn't found something they're willing to die for isn't fit to live. Those are pretty strong words. But I really believe in my soul that what changes people is when you find something to serve more than yourself.
So join me on the Recession Podcast by Jeezy. That's RESESSION Podcast. That's right, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer your podcasts.
Hey, this is Dean Unglert.
And I'm Jared Haven. Together, we host a podcast called Help I Suck at Dating.
Do you suck at dating? No, seriously. Do you suck at dating?
Do you feel like you're always trying to get it right and it just doesn't happen?
Are you going through a breakup asking yourself, what happened? Did he say, it's not you, it's me? Well, maybe it is you.
We are here to help. We definitely sucked at dating and somehow we turned it around.
When we started this show, we were both single, but now Jared is married.
And Dean's been in a relationship for over a year, and he's happy.
We were both on The Bachelor, and we learned a lot. We've enlisted the help of experts, teachers, coaches, celebrities, therapists, doctors, everyone who can help us so we don't suck at dating.
Join us each week for Help I Suck at Dating. We'll laugh, we'll cry, but we'll get it figured out.
Listen to Help I Suck at Dating on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join the Suck Army.
Weather's lousy around America. Lots of America right now. Upgrade. You saw that game, Patriots-Ravens. You want to drive home on that without the right wipers? Michelin Endurance XD silicone wiper blades last 2 times longer, only available at Walmart. Peter King around the corner. So, James Harden wants to play with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. It's 3 movie stars, right? But sometimes you can put movie stars together and the movie's a mess. The agent, is the agents for the stars are calling the director, my guy's not in enough scenes. And then the director or the coach, Steve Nash, is kind of walking on eggshells. He doesn't want to offend any of the stars. And then, the stars control a little bit too much of the script, a little too much ad-libbing. That's what it kind of feels like. When LeBron, Wade, and Bosh played together, 3 stars. And by the way, Bosh was a 26-12 guy. Like, he was a star. He was the best basketball player Certainly not in America at the time. Okay, it was in Canada. There was an order to things. LeBron late, D-Wade to 2, and Bosh was a 3. It was understood. By the way, Wade has never been ball-centric, Bosh isn't ball-centric, and LeBron's always been a very willing elevator of others and passer. Try telling Kyrie, you're a 3rd. Excuse me? Right now, I'm not sure you can convince him the world has a curve. Kareem Magic Worthy. There was an order to things. Kareem, the big fella, was the bucket late. Magic controlled the tempo. James Worthy was the wing guy and a 3rd. KG was the alpha. Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, who had aged. You get an order. Listen, KD has already played. Now, a lot of people were concerned when Kevin Durant went to Golden State. And I was like, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but it became very clear early. I didn't think it would work as well, but you figured something out really quickly. Steph had the self-awareness to step back and go, KD had taken the big shots late. He's harder to defend than me. Steph controlled the tempo, 2nd guy in the pecking order to take shots, and Klay Thompson, a very willing catch-and-shoot guy, if those two got tangled up. You've got to have an order to things, and this looks like a great movie poster, but not much of a movie. And again, I'd love to listen to the huddle with 20 seconds left in a tie game against the Celtics, who Kyrie used to play for, and the coach, Steve Nash, walks in and goes, Kyrie, you're a decoy on this. How's that going to play? He wants to get back at the Celtics. I don't. KD played with somebody that was ball-centric. It was called Russell Westbrook, and he would get the ball too late in the shot clock. He didn't like it. Now he's going to play with 2 guys that are incredibly ball-centric. And so to me, it just screams rookie head coach, walking on eggshells, trying to do a balancing act, not really doing what's best for the team, but one night KD gets the big shot, the next it's Harden, then you got to make sure, Kyrie's in a right space mentally, he's okay. That's walking on eggshells. That's not how you make a great movie. I don't think it's how you make a great basketball team. I do think it would be fun. They'd have amazing nights. It's great for my business. I'm rooting for it. I think it's great. But in terms of, is it a championship team? We've been all watching this league for a long time. We know it's just not players. The Miami Heat the Heatles were very flawed. They had no true center. They weren't great at point guard. They were a lousy rebounding team. But it was the order of things. And Dwayne Wade very quickly was like, oh, I get it. It may be Wade County, but I'm the 2 here. On some nights, if Bosh is hot, I'm the 3. And when Golden State, KD, I thought it would be problematic. KD, Steph, and Klay. But Steph Curry, very early on, even in the recruiting pitch, said, no, bro, you get the last shot. You're the best scorer in the world. There's got to be an order to stuff, or it's just you put the coach in this untenable walking on eggshell situation. Now, again, for me, I am rooting for this. I'm all in. Frankly, I'll talk about it later. I don't know if it's good for the league. It's good for us. I don't know if it's good for the league, but it's good for my eyes when Brooklyn's on. That I know and that I like. Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, the Bucks are reportedly finalizing a trade with the Pelicans for guard Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
The deal would send Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, and 3 future first-round picks to New Orleans, and also includes 2 additional draft pick swaps. Holiday is a 2-time All-Defensive Team honoree and has averaged at least 19 points in each of his last 3 seasons.
I've always liked him.
He's a great player and a great teammate, and this is Milwaukee trying to make an effort to keep Giannis. So this is a good move for them.
Yeah, I don't. Again, we're getting to a point now. I think it's easier, and I think people have come around to enjoying the NBA. The GMs have come around to it. It's one thing to give up a top 3 draft pick, but if Milwaukee's going to be too good to get good draft picks, so give up a 29th draft pick. Who cares? Drew Holiday is better guaranteed than the next 3 29th draft picks. So, bottom line, let's win now and reward the fans in Milwaukee.
And let's try and do our best to convince Giannis that we're making active moves to improve the roster so he stays there and doesn't leave for Miami.
Yeah. I've always been a Drew Holiday fan. He plays defense.
Drew Holiday's a great player. He's a great defender.
Yeah.
He's a great teammate. This is a big upgrade for them. They also are reportedly going to do a sign and trade for the Kings' Bogdanovich.
All right.
So they'll send Dante DiVincenzo, Ersan Ilyasova, and DJ Wilson to Sacramento for Bogdanovich and Justin James. So they are making moves, which is what Giannis asked for. He said he's going to sit back and see what they do.
Yeah.
So they are actively trying to upgrade their roster.
Certainly
which they
makes
need to do
Milwaukee.
because they've had colossal disappointments in the playoffs as of late.
Yeah, I mean, this morning I wake up and I'm like, oh, Milwaukee's better.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. Milwaukee's better today.
So Russell Wilson has struggled for the Seahawks lately, turning the ball over 7 times in the last 2 games, but Pete Carroll is confident that he is doing everything he can to clean up those mistakes.
Russ would tell you that he always tries hard as he can. But there is a point in there where you can feel like, if I don't do something here, maybe it won't happen. And that's when overtrying does take place. Russ is busting his ass to play for this football team, and he's doing everything he can. And I would never, ever think twice about anything but that. But that doesn't mean that he can't fall prey to it, too. He'll come back and he'll be great.
Well, whose fault is it that he's overtrying?
Okay, yeah. It's interesting. Listen. I've said this yesterday, so I don't want to go into it again. Like, what does Seattle do well? And everything that is connected to Russell is always really good. But outside of that, if it's not connected to Russell, game to game, you don't know what you're getting. So, is it a defensive philosophy? A lot of people want Ken Norton Jr., the defensive coordinator. They're like done with it. Pete has been historically pretty loyal to certain assistants, like a lot of coaches are.
Right.
I think there's a feeling around some people up in Seattle. He's been too loyal to Ken Norton, and that he needs to make a change there and go get a young DC or whatever. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'll tell you this. Even look at their draft picks. The draft picks that aren't connected to Russell Wilson have been very hit and miss.
Well, they're in a very interesting position now after that loss because they're now on a short week. They play the Cardinals on Thursday. They just lost to.
This is one of the biggest Thursday night football games I remember. This is a huge Thursday night football game on Fox.
This is a must-win for the Seahawks.
There's total urgency.
Yes, I mean they have to. They're now 3rd place in the division. They can't lose to the Cardinals twice. This is a really, really big game. I mean the turnover is obviously an issue for Russell Wilson, but like Carroll said, he's overtrying because that's all he can do. Like he has to overtry. He's the last line defense for this team. So Drew Brees will miss some time after suffering multiple rib fractures and a collapsed right lung. The most optimistic timetable for his return is 2 to 3 weeks, but the Saints are preparing for it to be a bit longer. Brees is trying to remain positive about his situation. He posted a picture on Instagram with his 3 children tending to him with the caption, "Who Dat Nation, I got the best medical team in the world. I'll be back in no time," which is very cute. And he's using that breathing exercise machine. He has a total of 5 fractured ribs. And 3 of the broken ribs actually came the week prior against the Bucks. So he appeared to be injured midway through the second quarter after the sack, and it's 2 weeks feels aggressive for this.
Oh God! No. And by the way, if Jameis beats Atlanta and Denver, why would you bring Brees back? Just keep playing Jameis as long as you're winning.
Until he's 100%.
Just keep playing Jameis Winston.
Well, that's why they were lucky with Teddy Bridgewater last year. So that's we'll have to see. I'm very interested to see what Jameis does.
I'll tell you
They
this.
didn't become less interesting.
No, I'll throw a theory at you. So Tom Brady has been the most consistent quarterback of my lifetime.
Yeah.
Suddenly Tom goes to Tampa, and in 10 weeks he's been terrible 3 times, mediocre twice, and great 5 times. So why did he get inconsistent? It's Bruce Arians' style create that. So the knock on Jameis is he's talented, but boy, he's inconsistent. Was Jameis the kid who's a little, he likes risk, and the coach is also a proponent of higher risk throws, so Arians and Jameis were actually a bad fit. Sean Payton is much more efficient, New England, detail-oriented. Is he actually a perfect fit? Because I think my knock on Jameis out of college was a little immature and a little loose.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Bruce Arians
is a little loose.
A little loose. So we thought Arians is great for Jameis. Could I make the argument what Jameis really needs is a Sean Payton or a Josh McDaniels?
He needs more balance.
Lower risk. So I think we'll see how it plays out, but I would not be shocked. I mean, Jameis is more talented than Teddy Bridgewater, and at this point, Drew Brees, in terms of talent. I think this could actually be Very interesting for New Orleans.
I'm fascinated to see how it works out. They have the Falcons twice. It's the Falcons at home, then at the Broncos, then at the Falcons. Then hypothetically, if Drew Brees was ready, it'd be at the Eagles, Chiefs, Vikings, and at the Panthers.
I would play Jameis until he loses. Like, if he won 3 straight, you get 4. 4 straight, 5. I just want Drew to get a couple of games before the playoffs. I would play Jameis throughout.
I mean, that's the most ideal. I mean, even if Jameis loses one, I guess that's the most ideal situation for them.
Yeah.
You want Drew Brees 100% for the playoffs. But this is an audition for Jameis Winston, possibly for the starting position for next year if Drew Brees retires.
Yeah, enjoy the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
No, it is. Like, I'm a cautious kid. Like, when I was a kid, I wasn't a huge risk taker. So, it was okay if my parents were a little loose. But I've seen kids who are crazy. They needed a stricter parent. Jameis may have the perfect stricter parent. It may be Sean Payton. I'm fascinated to watch this. Peter King joining us now, NBCSports.com, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. I wouldn't be shocked if Jameis goes in a 4-game winning streak. I really wouldn't. I think he's got... I've said this, Peter. I was never a huge fan of Cam, but I've always thought there's something there with Jameis. I think he's really talented, super productive. How do you think it plays out with Sean Payton? My gut feeling is it works.
Well, Colin, I'll tell you, my 3 observations, very brief. Number 1, I don't think this is going to be only a Jameis Winston production. I think Sean Payton is going to divide up the work between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. I don't think it'll be an even division of the work, but I think Taysom Hill will play more than he played when Drew Brees was playing. That's number 1. Number 2, everybody looks at Jameis Winston and says, oh my God, he's going to be great. His teammates love him. He's great in the locker room. He's a great teammate. He's got a wonderful arm, knows the offense, everything. But then he goes out and throws 30 interceptions.
Yeah.
And in his last throw ever as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, he stares down the Atlanta Falcons linebacker, throws it right in his chest, and it's a walk-off touchdown. And look, there are many people who you love and who you want to succeed, but that doesn't mean that they are going to be successful. Now, the third thing I would say, the day that Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints hired Jameis Winston, I got a call from somebody who knows Sean Payton very well, and he said this, that Jameis Winston will not be a turnover machine in New Orleans if he ever has to play. And if he is a turnover machine, he will not play, period. Because Sean Payton will not take it. He's gotten used to a guy who throws an interception every 3 games. So he's not going to stand for it if 2 or 3 times every game Jameis Winston is throwing it to the other team.
It's funny about coaching. We know quarterbacks run this league, but coaches are, right after that very crucial. And you can never really know who's going to work. I mean, if I watched Tom Coughlin coach at Boston College, I did not think he'd beat Brady and Belichick twice in a Super Bowl. Judge, I thought Joe Judge was a reach. I think the Giants now are the best 3-7 team I've seen in years. Brian Flores has done everything right in Miami. Do you think Miami feels like a top 6-7 team to me? Are you surprised by how good Miami is in this rebuild midway through year 2?
Colin, before this season, when I picked all the division winners, I think I was the only person in humankind to pick Miami to win the AFC East. And a friend of mine from Miami called me and he goes, wow, what are you doing? They're not that good. And I said, well, I know, I don't love them, but I said, I really love the coach. And I said, there's just something about it. I can't sit here right now and tell you how they're going to win or what exactly is going to happen to make them win. I just know that last year at mid-season, they were the worst team in football and it wasn't close.
Right.
And then, over the next 2 months, they had a better record than the New England Patriots. Somehow, some way, that happened. And then in the offseason, they had another good offseason. They got their quarterback. They got Emmanuel Ogbah, who nobody believed was going to be very good because he was always hurt. And now he's contending for the sack leadership in the league. And Tua's 3-0 with a quarterback rating 10 points higher than Ryan Fitzpatrick's was.
Yeah.
So he makes the right calls. And one other thing. He got rid of both his offensive and defensive coordinator after his first year. He's decisive.
Yeah.
You know, he's like Mike Tomlin in many ways.
Yeah. By the way, I'll say this. Steve Keim, I know Steve, the GM of Arizona. And one of the things that men don't like to be wrong, and if they are, they don't like to admit it publicly. That's my psycho babble for today. Steve Keim literally, with both his head coach and his quarterback, said 1 year in, yeah, I whiffed on that. I'm going to do over. And the owner of Arizona's like, all right, I'll give you do-over. And I think it looks like he's hit 2 home runs. This is what paralyzes organizations, Peter. When the GM makes a mistake and doesn't want to own up to it. Steve Keim, to me, wins the Executive of the Year for acknowledging he kind of whiffed on a couple of key positions. Because when I look at Arizona, you cannot deny they look... Cliff Kingsbury is working. He is learning on the job, but this feels like to me it's not a mirage. Arizona's a real team.
Right. I just wonder sometimes, Colin, 20 years from now, when Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace look back at their careers and they say, I wonder if they're going to say, man, we stuck way too long with a quarterback who we didn't believe in.
Yes.
But you know why? Because they drafted him second overall.
Yes.
You know, I wonder if that's what they're going to say 20 years from now about Mitchell Trubisky. Whereas, look, I think everybody in the NFL thought that Steve Wilks and Josh Rosen got an absolute bum deal from the Arizona Cardinals. Not just a few people. Everybody thought that what they did was awful. And, you know, look, fortunately, unfortunately, whatever, I mean, it really looks like that is going to turn out to be a good call by them.
Yeah.
And let's wait and see a little bit. They just had an incredible victory. If that ball gets knocked away, are we doing this small segment in our show?
Yeah.
You know, are we that they lost 2 games in a row at home, both of which they should have won? Would we be saying wonderful things? Maybe not. But I agree with you. And Kyler Murray is such an incredible player. And I said to him the other day, because I talked to him after the game, I said, you know, I just want you to know, I've been covering the league for 35 years or so. I really love watching you play football.
Yeah.
I said, and I'm glad you played football. You know,
right?
And so, but that's the way that team is right now. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah, well, you know, the advantage, both Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray could be baseball players in the bigs, but, you know, the bottom line, there's a lot of reasons why they chose football. One of it is football gives you a free scholarship. 2, you don't have to go in the minor leagues for 5 years. You could go from college, Wisconsin, to the NFL. It's a big advantage football has over baseball.
But how about, Colin, how about this? Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray all got drafted, and people tried to talk every one of them into playing baseball. And they just wouldn't do it, and lucky for football.
So I defended Lamar Jackson, who is now 25-3 in games against anybody not named Patrick Mahomes. And I said, it's funny about him. Josh Allen has played Belichick 4 times. He's been awful 3 of them, and not great the last time. Lamar's played him twice, beat him once, and I thought was pretty effective, although he lost in a monsoon in Foxborough. In my take, every weekend, every time he loses, I just hear this avalanche of Lamar doubters, and I'm like, folks, if Patrick Mahomes doesn't exist, he's probably got a Super Bowl somewhere in this eventually. So your take, do you believe, though, because he doesn't play quite as well from behind, that's indisputable, do you believe there's at least murmurs, talk of a little concern about that in Baltimore?
Probably, but fans will be fans. The front office, I still think, is a big believer overall in Lamar Jackson. And look, Colin, you know, that team right now is just so incredibly beat up.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they shouldn't win and they don't have enough talent to win, but look at the valuable players that they have lost. Just, they've lost in the last month, I bet, 10 valuable players. Really valuable players. And Sunday, look, it's hard to win in New England anyway, and I don't think they lost that game because of a monsoon, although it didn't help. I think they lost that game because Calais Campbell isn't there. Their run defense isn't nearly as good. They're missing. They got 2 huge injuries on the offensive line. Their blocking tight end now is gone.
Yep.
It's just, this is a different team than the one that ransacked the AFC last year.
Good stuff, Peter King. Football Morning in America. NBCSports.com votes for the Pro Football Hall of Fame since 1992. The Board of Selectors. Peter, as always, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you, Colin.
All right, the herd hierarchy, top of next hour, and Notre Dame football coach Brian Kelly coming up next. LeBron created player empowerment. I mean, players always moved a little, but LeBron made it cool and fashionable. Is it good for the NBA? I'll talk about that coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Nearly 600 years after the invention of the printing press, the most important book in the history of the world has arrived.
That might be overstating things.
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things. It will change your life forever.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
Most scientists agree that Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, is proof that time travel is possible. Because that is the only way to explain how a book this impressive was possibly made.
What?
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, will regrow hair, whiten your teeth, and improve your love life.
That's just not at all right. Well, the love life part, maybe, if you find someone who thinks smart is sexy.
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things. Available for pre-order now at stuffyoushouldknow.com.
Now that is true.
I'm Stephanie Rule, MSNBC anchor and host of the podcast Modern Rules from NBC Think and iHeartRadio. The new season of my podcast is back with more probing conversations that get at the heart of the issues that are keeping us up at night. From sex and dating during COVID to the stark reality that the gender gap is a lot wider than we thought, and the true ramifications of misinformation.
These ideas that coronavirus is really just about government control, that it's infringing on civil liberties, all of these ideas are similar ideas to the anti-vaccine movement.
So where do we go from here? Join me, Stephanie Rule, for the second season of Modern Rules. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Faced a lot of opponents over the year, none tougher than age. Begin every morning with M-Drive Start. 1 scoop. Protein vitamins, digestive enzymes, elite nutrition. Try it at mdrivestart.com. I had one this morning, mdrivestart.com. So, I think we would all acknowledge this. Sometimes what is good for the individual is not always good for the corporation. There's lots of people that work at corporations in America, and they eventually leave them. They want to do their own thing. Both will survive. LeBron works in the NBA, but he has created a player empowerment movement. I think it's very good for the individual star. I don't know if it's good for the league or the average players, but Jim Gray was on our show last week. He was the host of The Decision and talked about that moment with LeBron.
That was the moment. It was the Kurt Flood moment for this generation of player empowerment and of the birth, really, of communicating through social media and the rise of the Players Tribune and just how things go now, the reverberations of that show and the passage of time. The NBA players and all of sports, every player in sports owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to LeBron James.
I would agree. But again, I do believe it leaves a lot of fans and a lot of cities feeling jilted. I'll give you an example. In the last 2 years, I want you to think about this. In just the last 2 years, LeBron, AD, Kawhi, Harden, potentially, KD and Kyrie. 6 of the top 8 players, arguably, have all chosen LA or New York. Increasingly, the NBA feels coastal and elite, and markets play a huge factor. Now, there's also good news today. The Milwaukee Bucks got Drew Holiday, so let's not have a pity party for everybody not named LA or New York. But the NBA ratings, and I'm a huge fan of the sport, have been in a 5-year free fall. Is it LeBron fatigue? Is it political? Did it just go against the NFL? I don't have all the answers. I do think the Masters got lousy ratings. The World Series was down, although it was fun. The NBA ratings when you go up against the NFL. Good luck to all of you. It's really hard. But I do think you've got to be careful about dismissing your consumers. And I think when you have all these great players, they all want to play in New York or LA or Miami, it feels very coastal. There's not a lot of stars left, thank goodness for Luka, in the middle of the country. At one point, Oklahoma City had 3. Now they've got none, and Chris Paul wants to go. So I think it's something you have to address. NBA stars are not only saying, I want out of here. They're going, I want out of here, and I want to go to LA, New York, Miami. And now some of this I think is cultural. I think the basketball culture in America is different than the football culture. The basketball culture tends to be a little more worship-driven. You spot the talent, and players have such impact, great players. A little worship goes on, maybe a little bit too early, 1 year of college, off to get paid. And I think sometimes emotionally, the kids aren't quite ready to be superstars. Adam Silver acknowledges, my guys are miserable because they're on their phones and see what people say. You don't hear NFL players saying they're miserable because the NFL culture is 3 or 4 or 5 years of college. You're not going to get paid. It's really hard. You may get hurt, and you're going to have to deal with it. And you're not going to make any real money until your second contract in the NFL. The culture of football is more about development physically and emotionally. The basketball culture is more about find the basketball player at 14, make him great early, and everybody from him to those connected to him makes a lot of money. And so I'm not saying I'm not going to watch the NBA, and I'm not saying it's not great, and I'm not saying Harden, Kyrie, and KD wouldn't be a fascinating watch. It would get ratings when the games are on. I don't know if player empowerment is, always great for the collective. If you're Sacramento, if you're Detroit, if you're Portland, if you're San Antonio, do you feel Indiana? Do you feel left out? A little bit. I'm not going to lie. Nobody feels left out in the NFL in the small markets. Kansas City feels like a king. Green Bay feels valuable. Saints feel like they matter much more than the New York teams. The NFL's the league of hope. Market size doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter. Bottom line, small market, tiny town, Green Bay. They win Super Bowls, lots of them. Pittsburgh is not a flashy town. They matter more than 90. If the NFL was the NBA, the Cowboys would run it. The Cowboys have done the opposite of running it, right? So I do worry about this. I think player empowerment's great, but I don't think it's always great for the league. Not always. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. I'm selfish. I like. I saw Dennis Schroeder is going to go to the Lakers. I'm like, LeBron, AD, and the Lakers are going to be better? I'm on in Los Angeles radio. That's good for my business. Miami's good. It's a flashy market. That's good for me. But just kind of look at the cultures of it. NFL quarterbacks don't just say, I don't want to play. I want to go play with all the other good players. They just don't. Both leagues have a salary cap. You don't see NFL quarterbacks like, I don't want to play. I want to go play with all the good receivers. It's like, no, Big Ben's a Steeler. And that's because if you look at the CBA, NFL doesn't allow that. And so the players know you're in this together for a long time. It's about community. It's about us. NBA sometimes can be a little bit about me. It's about the star. And this is what you get. You get some really great teams, and you do get a lot of fan bases that feel a little left out. That's why it's probably good when Toronto wins a title or Milwaukee rolls in one. It's probably good for the league. It really is. It's probably good for the league. RecTech grills, built by grillers for grillers. That's rectech.com, RECTEQ.com. Stainless steel, you buy this grill, there'll never be another grill you'll need to buy. Ever. Ever. Coming up next, Brian Kelly, Notre Dame football coach. They won again this weekend. And the herd hierarchy, has the league at the halfway point ever had this many at least good teams? That's next.
This is Fight Night, a new podcast from iHeartRadio.
They thought he'd robbed the deadliest man in this country. Guys who would not hesitate to blow your head off.
This story from Atlanta, Georgia, has been reported for 50 years. But now, for the first time, you're going to hear what really happened from the people who lived it. Listen and follow Fight Night on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yo, this is Jeezy, urban philosopher, philanthropist, and the host of the Recession Podcast, a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'll bring you raw conversations about systemic racism, mental health, life on the streets, and much more. So join me on the Recession Podcast by Jeezy. That's RESESSION Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer your podcast.
My name is Jamie Loftus, and I'm here to tell you about my new show, Lolita Podcast. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov is one of the most controversial works of all time, and our culture has done its protagonist a huge disservice over the years. I've spent the last few months getting to the bottom of how America turned this abused young girl into a sex symbol and what that says about us. New episodes drop weekly on Mondays starting November 23rd. Listen to Lolita Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. This season, we'll have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes. Guests include the amazing singer and actor Anthony Ramos, TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio, NBA star Aaron Gordon, and many more. Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Hour number 2 live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, FS1. You know, I went with a different color today on the air. I don't even know what this is. Joey, what would you say this is?
That's it's like a salmon.
Yeah. Well, I'm from the coast of Washington. That's salmon fishing territory.
Yeah.
Like
I'm running out of sweaters, so.
You are?
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's LA, so it's not that cold here.
Not a lot of sweater shops in Los Angeles.
Although it got hot again really quickly. We were all complaining for like 1 week. Yeah. It dropped below 60, and now it's hot again. So.
Yeah. So Doug Peterson coaches the Philadelphia Eagles. He won a Super Bowl. He out-dueled Brady and Belichick. And a lot of people made the mistake of considering Nick Foles a great player when he did that. No, Nick was a average player who had a great game. I still contend I think Doug Peterson's a really good coach. He went on Philadelphia radio, as you do after you play a game in Philadelphia, a big radio station. What is it called? WIP. It's very popular. A lot of people yell and scream at each other. And Angelo Castaldi was the coach, and he asked him a question, and Doug got in a bad mood, and he talked about what's happening to the Eagles and what's gone wrong and what kind of mood he's in.
I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off at myself. I'm pissed off at the way we played, and it frustrates me. It frustrates me to no end. And we have too much pride, and I have too much pride. These players have too much pride. We work our ass off during the week. It's frustrating. It is frustrating, and blame it on me all you want. I'll handle it with the players. You can blame it on me. I'm a big guy. I can handle it. That's fine.
You know, it's funny. We do this a lot. We do it with politics, and we do it with sports. We're trying to find the problem. The guy. Blame her, him, the. Philadelphia's got a lot of issues. It's not one guy. It's not Carson Wentz or just Doug Peterson. They lost a great offensive coordinator, Frank Reich. Frank Reich left them, and with Jacoby Brissett, a beat-up Andrew Luck, and Phillip Rivers, he's 23-18. Doug Peterson in a crappy division is now 21-19. Like, Frank Reich was a big problem. We can blame Carson Wentz. You can even blame Doug Peterson. I thought he got worked Sunday. I thought he had a bad game as a coach. It happens. Andy Reid's had bad Sundays. But in the end, this is not a problem. The reality is, when Frank Reich was there, Carson Wentz was a young quarterback and getting better and better and better. And he's not quite as good. He's just not their offensive. And then you throw in the chaos of their offensive line issues and their wide receiver issues. By the way, you don't want to know what Matt Ryan is in Atlanta since Kyle Shanahan left? 27 and 29. Jared Goff was almost the biggest bust in NFL history as a number 1 pick. And since Sean McVay took over, he's 37 and 19. Like, coaches matter, coordinators matter. At any given time in this league, there's 3 or 4 coordinators who are exceptional. They usually become head coaches. You know, Kyle Shanahan took 4 straight quarterbacks, 3 or 4 different teams. They all got better. He goes to the Niners. He gets Jimmy Garoppolo to a Super Bowl. Frank Reich, with kind of marginal quarterback play, a beat-up Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, old Phillip Rivers, unathletic, has got a better record than Doug Peterson. So everybody's trying to find the problem. It's not a problem or the guy or the problem. Philadelphia's got several. One of them is they lost a great coordinator, and their quarterback had a really good relationship with him. He's never been the same. All right, here we go. It's our herd hierarchy, the top 10 teams in the NFL. There's a lot of teams I like that did not make the cut, and here we go.
Herd hierarchy.
Now, let's go.
The top 10 NFL teams according to Colin. Number 10.
This is I'll go with Arizona, but I thought they were lucky to beat Seattle and Buffalo. They were outplayed by both, so you get the win. I'm not giving you a ton of credit, but they are the number 1 total offense in the NFL. They've won 5 straight games with 30-plus points. They're 4-1 in that span, so it's an exhilarating offense. It's multi-dimensional. They can run, they can throw it, they can go deep, and I put them at number 10.
Number 9.
The Ravens. Listen, the reality is they're missing a lot of good starters, and they are 0-6, trailing by 10-plus points. But they still have the number 1 scoring defense in the league, including Pittsburgh, and the number 2 rushing offense, and they're going to get healthier. So I don't think they're a Super Bowl team today, but they're still, in my opinion, a top 10 team. Put them at 9.
Number 8.
Listen, Green Bay, to me, is a little overrated. They're very Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams dependent. They couldn't even get 80 rushing yards against the Jaguars. They're not a physical team. They're very limited. They've held opposing quarterbacks under 300 passing yards in every game this year. Some of it is you don't have to throw on them. But I think they're so good at running back, so good at quarterback, so good at wide receiver, and a couple of nice defensive players up front. But I do think they miss Blake Martinez, the linebacker. I do think you can run on them, but they have enough stars that they deserve to be at number 8.
Number 7.
The Rams. By the way, how good is this secondary? I mean, Jalen Ramsey just took DK Metcalf out. They've got 2 good young safeties. They found another corner in the draft. They have never lost under Sean McVay when they lead at half. And they're the first team to hold Seattle to fewer than 27 points this season. Number 1 ranked defense and total defense in the NFC this year. This is not an offensive team. It is not. They're getting to the quarterback. They have the top corner, the top defensive lineman in the league, and I think they have the top secondary in the NFC. I put them at 7.
Number 6.
But Miami beat them. And Miami's special teams are excellent. Their defense is excellent. In their 5-game winning streak, they're allowing 17 points a game. And I think if they played Seattle, again, they'd beat them because now they've got Tua who doesn't make mistakes. They have the 5th best point differential in the NFL this year. I watched them go to Arizona and win and really outplay Arizona. And for stretches at least, bottle up Kyler Murray in stretches. Coaching, defense, special teams win in this league, especially around Thanksgiving and beyond. I've got them at 6.
Number 5.
I'll take Buffalo because I do think their defense, which was a little bit of a mess for about a month, they now have 9 takeaways in the 4th quarter this season, most in the NFL. And I think their defense is kind of finding its way with a very good defensive coaching staff. They've forced 6 turnovers in the last couple of games. They outplayed Arizona. So they went on the road and they outplayed Arizona. Colin, Arizona beat Buffalo. If they played in Buffalo, Buffalo would win. If they played in a neutral field, Buffalo would win. A Hail Mary does not mean you're better. I think Buffalo is a really good team, and I think they've shored up some of their defensive issues.
Number 4.
Tampa Bay. Now, why would I put them there? Well, they're the only team to win 3 games this year by 20-plus points. When they're on, they are really good. They've got 7 or 8 elite players. Only Kansas City can match their high-end talent. And now they've been inconsistent. But if you look at them last week, they flexed. They showed off against the Carolina team that'd been a tough out. Listen, they're 0-2 against the Saints. They're 7-1 against everybody else in football. It's a really good team.
Number 3.
The Saints. I think they'll win with Jameis Winston. They're on a 6-game winning streak. That's the longest in the NFC. Alvin Kamara leads the NFL in scrimmage yards. Their defense was a little uneven early. I think they've played very good in the last couple of weeks. I don't think they'll take a major step back offensively with Jameis. I think they're going to be fine with Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. And listen, they have shelled Tampa twice. So I'm putting them over Tampa.
Number 2.
Pittsburgh, only remaining undefeated team. Most sacks in the league, best sack differential. I don't think anybody denies it's the best front 7 in the league. Their offense has been a little hit and miss. I did think blowing out Cincinnati was impressive. Cincinnati's got a win. They've been a little bit of an annoyance to some of the good teams. They totally dominated Tennessee Steelers at number 2.
Number 1.
Kansas City, let's just not even argue. They have the number 1 point differential, and I think they would beat Pittsburgh if they played right now anywhere. Pittsburgh, Kansas City, neutral field. I think they've gotten everything right. I think their defense is top 5. I think their offense can play power smash mouth football. They can clearly go over the top. They're less reliant on Patrick Mahomes than they were even last year. I think from week 12 of last year, this is the best football team in the National Football League. And I think they have a chance if Mahomes stays standing up and they can re-sign some of these offensive linemen. I think you have a chance to have another dynasty off a dynasty. We get one about every 10 years. We may have back-to-backs from New England to Kansas City. So Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly, I'm a big fan of Brian Kelly. I've said this before. I'm always impressed, not with a trust fund kid that makes money. What's your background? You know, I can see the end of your movie. I don't get to see the beginning of it. But if I hear about the beginning of your movie and it's tougher, I think more of you later in life if you succeed. Notre Dame's an academic power. It is, let's face it, it's in cold weather territory. Alabama, Clemson's not. It's a hard place over the last 30 years to get 9-10 wins a year. They don't duck people. They played Georgia a couple times. They'll go out and play like legitimate bowl teams every year. And Brian Kelly, to me, is their best coach since Lou Holtz. And I've watched him 2 or 3 times this year. I think outside of maybe Alabama, I think they match up with everybody. They with that offensive line, they may match up with Alabama. They may. So we're going to be Brian Kelly. I'm a big fan of his coming up next.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you like.
Hey everybody, it's Ben Higgins.
And it's Ashley I, and we're the hosts of the Almost Famous podcast.
I was the Bachelor and know firsthand how dating 25 people at one time is not easy.
And I was on the show a time or 2 or 4. Yep, 4 times. But I met my husband, so I'm proof that the process works.
We do interviews with the cast members creating the headlines. We go in-depth about their experiences on the show.
And we get juicy details that they would never air.
We break down the episodes each week and give our insight into the drama.
Believe me, it's not always how it seems, and we're able to give you the insider perspective.
Since we've been there.
Yeah, 4 times.
The Bachelor cast doesn't just stir up drama on screen. Their personal lives are always making the pages of the magazines.
And we update you every week on these hot topics. And we know pretty much everyone, so we're a reliable source.
Listen to Almost Famous on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Ever wondered why there are 2 ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at stuffyoushouldknow.com or wherever books are sold.
Saturday on Fox, it's a battle of Big 12 title contenders as K-State takes on Iowa State at 4 Eastern. Then Arizona and Washington clash in Pac-12 action at 8 Eastern. College football Saturday beginning at 4 Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
Do you know who has the longest winning streak in college football? Notre Dame. 14 straight wins. They've won 10-plus games in the last 3 years. And when Brian Kelly first took over at Notre Dame, it was so intense because Notre Dame's pressure is so much. And I thought, he's a good coach, but man, does he want to do this forever? He's never looked more comfortable. They've never been on more of a roll. They've never had more NFL bodies. And Brian Kelly is going to join me live now from a great place to join me live from, Notre Dame football headquarters. You know, it is true, Brian. I think you look comfortable. I think you look happy. I saw you. You played a close game against Louisville, and I watched the post-game interview, and you were very at ease. And it was a windy, choppy day. And I gotta be honest, the first 5 years there, Notre Dame's a lot. It's a lot of pressure. You look more comfortable. That's what I see. Have you found kind of a groove, Brian? Expectations, staff, because you look like you're in a good place.
Yeah, I mean, I think early on, it's like anything else. You come to Notre Dame, and the pressure is not to lose, and that's the wrong way to look at it. You've got to really come here and think about the production and how your players are competing, and don't even look at the scoreboard. And I think we spend too much time thinking about winning games, and when it's all about winning, you play tight, and there's just too much anxiety. I think we've gone to the point now where it's about our production and how we play on Saturdays, and the rest takes care of itself, and it's gone pretty good for us over the last 4 years.
I ran into Ian Book's dad in Utah this summer, and I said, I like your son, and I said, but Brian's going to push him, and this is what Brian's going to do. He's going to push the quarterback, and I watch Ian, and he delivers for you. Is this your, all things considered, is this your best Notre Dame team?
I would say it is. We had some great players on the 12 team, the 18 team, and even 15. Will Fuller on the outside, CJ Procise. I mean, there were some great players in 15. But I think if you talk about physicality, if you think about the basic premises of putting together a really good football team, it's O-line, D-line, and speed on defense. And I think those are the three areas that separate this football team.
It's interesting. I had a PJ Fleck on, a guy I have a great deal of respect for. His team's kind of unraveled. I know James Franklin. I love James. His team's unraveled. Yep. I know Harbaugh. It's not been good. So I'm watching some of these really good coaches, and it is with COVID, it is unraveled, Coach. Okay. You have not. Do you look back over the last 6 months and think, boy, I'm glad we did this? Because whatever you're doing, I've seen a lot of good coaches. It just comes unglued here, and you haven't. Why do you think that is?
Oh, wow. There's a book to be written about this. And there's every step along the way has been one to navigate through with clear communication. Our first meeting is what I would say was probably the most important. And we said, look, you guys need to understand you should not be here unless you understand that you're going to have to sacrifice a lot, things that you've never sacrificed before, because this is going to be difficult. And I think that first meeting kind of set the tone that everybody that was there was going to have to pay attention to the detailed things if they wanted to fight this virus and fight for a championship. And I think that helped us in our first meeting.
First of all, I think you become an offensive line machine, and Notre Dame offensive linemen, it should be noted, are getting paid. Getting paid, folks. So,
get that message out, because when we call for that big endowment check, we want them to remember that.
But it's interesting because I've seen you play Georgia twice. They're go-either-way games. I saw you beat Clemson. And there was about a 15-20 year period where I was like, That's not a good space for Notre Dame. And so you are going into homes, and you're competing against Clemson, Bama, and LSU and Georgia for players in Ohio State. And it's tougher at Notre Dame. Academics are tough. It's a small town. The weather's not always grand in November, December. But do you feel like the way you're rolling now, that you can go in against Saban, and there are players you can beat him on?
Yeah, again, we're very transparent in terms of who we are and what we're looking for. So we're going to be clear when we talk about why you would come to Notre Dame. Here are the things that you would get by coming here. And I think that that's where we'll have our niche. Now, again, I think what we can point to is that we have an incredibly physical football team on both sides of the ball, and we've developed those players to move on to the NFL as well. So I think that there's a great niche there. You're going to come to the Midwest. You're going to expect to play in difficult conditions. So, this is where we can really, for us, get into some of those homes and talk about how we can develop you and get you ready for the next stage. And we've done really well with those kids that understand Notre Dame and want to move on to the NFL, especially those linemen.
Yeah, Jalen Smith, by the way, Will Fuller, Quentin Nelson, Chase Claypool. Quentin's going to get paid a lot. And guards generally don't. He's going to make a lot of money. It's interesting. You've won everywhere. And you've not just won as a coordinator, you've won as a head coach. And the great thing about college football, Brian, is that you change lives. It's an incredibly rewarding experience. But I have to ask this. You're good enough to coach in the NFL. It's not a money thing. It is a itch thing. It's a Pete Carroll say. Do you think you'll ever scratch that itch?
No, I think I've always looked at the possibility, but I'm at a point now at Notre Dame where I can control the roster. I have a great understanding of what our process is here. They give me the opportunity to set this program up and make all the decisions as it relates to how this program runs on a day-to-day basis. You don't get those opportunities in the NFL unless you're Bill Belichick or Andy Reid. So for me to give up all of that to go into the NFL, as much as you want to be able to coach the best players in the world, this is such a great opportunity at Notre Dame. It's one that you can't give up.
I got to talk about one of your opponents. So I follow recruiting because I'm a dork, and I saw this kid. I got to tell you something. That quarterback, that freshman quarterback for Clemson, Joy and I were watching him. I saw him on tape 2 years ago, and I'm like, I can't believe he's a high schooler. Now, everything's a little bit of a fastball, but did you go – you recruited him too, didn't you?
Yeah, until he gave us the temperature and the wind chill temperature in South Bend. DJ is just a wonderful kid. And of course, he's at a school where Notre Dame can recruit. It's a great profile school for us. But yeah, we knew we weren't in that running pretty early on when we knew weather was going to be a factor there. But what a terrific player, and what a tough problem Dabo's got with those two guys.
No kidding. That's your backup. Hey, continued success, your schedule, you're at Carolina, you got Syracuse at Wake Forest. It sets up well if you're focused. You know how much respect I have for you. Brian, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and congrats on that win over Clemson and BC.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You bet. Brian Kelly, great football coach at Notre Dame. And here is Joy Taylor with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Yeah, that South Bend weather hits a little different.
No, it's different. I mean, like you, for some kids, like if you grew up in California or Florida, there's some kids that just don't. I get it. I'm watching that game. I'm watching that Cleveland Browns last 2 home games, and I'm like, not interested.
I mean, how about the Ravens-Patriots game?
It's like when I can't see the players.
It looks cold. You look cold at home, looking at how cold they are.
Right.
But you know what? If you can play in that weather, you can play anywhere. So Tua has been very successful as a starter in the NFL so far, and he said he thought the transition from college to the pros was going to be a lot more challenging than it has been.
Wow.
In an interview with Pro Football Talk, Tua said, I expected it to be a lot harder. Not that it's not hard, I would say I'm comfortable, but a lot of that starts from practice and just kind of a combined thought process for all of us together and to all kind of be on the same page. It starts from practice and then translates to the game. This actually makes sense that he says this. Obviously, it's going to sound like he's saying it's so easy to go from college to the NFL. But when you're prepared, everything is easier.
When you have Brian Flores for a top coach. I mean, I mean, you talk to Rams players about Sean McVay.
Yeah.
They don't hit once the season starts. So, like, if you've got the right coach and the right culture, it isn't as tough as it is playing for a bad team.
It's absolutely true. People ask me all the time, like, do you get nervous before you go on air? And I'm like, no, I'm not. The only time I'm ever nervous is if I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know what's happening. What are we gonna do? That's when I get nervous. We're prepped for days, for hours before the show. If you're prepared, there's nothing to be nervous about because this is what you do. Like, this is what we do. This is what they do. They play football. So if you're prepared, he said he talks to his offensive line a lot. Like, they're in constant communication. So the more that you are prepared, the easier it's going to be. Obviously, the speed of the game from college to the NFL is going to go up tremendously, but he knows what to do because he has good coaching. I am obviously thrilled with how the Dolphins are playing lately, and they have the Broncos this week, which Broncos at the Jets, Bengals, and then the Chiefs. We'll see how that one goes.
I like Miami again. They create turnovers, and Denver obliges.
Yeah, Drew Lock has been very gracious with the turnovers lately. So, the Raiders, speaking of the Chiefs, the Raiders defeated the Chiefs 40-32 in Kansas City back in Week 5. I love this story. After the game, the Raiders team's buses circled Arrowhead Stadium as if to take a victory lap before heading to the airport.
Love it.
And ahead of their second matchup this Sunday, Andy Reid and Jon Gruden spoke about the incident.
Listen, they won the game, so they can do anything they want to do. That's not our style, but we'll get ourselves back, ready to play.
Andy Reid mentioned a couple times the victory lap you guys took in KC. Is that something that you think about this week as far as book material?
Not really. I mean, you can find a smart aleck bus driver in Kansas City who made some snide comments when we got on the bus. Maybe that's why we drove around the stadiums to tick him off. You know, this is ridiculous. Next question.
That is so funny.
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's obviously not a story, but it's just funny. It's
First
funny
of all,
to ask about.
The NFL, since I was a kid, the Raiders have always been the rebel of the league.
Right.
They were always. I remember the first time I saw the Raiders, I thought they were wearing practice jerseys. They were all ripped and tattered, and their owner, Al Davis, fought the league, and John Madden guys would be sitting on helmets, and this is who they've been. So the Raiders are perfect in Vegas because it's an outlaw city.
Yep.
And this, I think the NFL is better when the Raiders are good and a little obnoxious and a little loud. It is perfect. Every league needs a villain, and I don't see the Raiders as a villain, but around the league, they're a little contrarian to the corporate NFL way of doing business.
Absolutely, and you need those brands.
Of course.
In every league. I think, and it's not a knock on Derek Carr at all, but I think if Derek Carr had a little edge to him, then they would fully lean into that. But Derek Carr is such a nice guy. Like, he just doesn't. He's obviously a great player, but he doesn't fit that, like, Raiders attitude.
Big Ben feels a little more Raider.
Yes.
He's a little scruffy. He'll tell you what he thinks. He's got a little drama. Big Ben to the Raiders, he feels a little bit
I mean, even someone like Baker.
Yeah, I mean, Baker would fit.
Even like Joe Burrow, who's not a big talker, but just has like a tiny little bit of edge to him. But I love it though. I'm really looking forward to this game. It is a funny story. It's just funny listening to the two of them talk about it.
College football's always, in my mind, been better when big city Miami and big city USC are a little obnoxious.
Yeah.
Baseball's better when the Yankees are winning and are a little obnoxious. It's okay to have somebody that pushes back on the corporate shield of the NFL.
I'm a big fan of villains.
Yeah.
I don't think you can really have a strong story without a strong villain.
Yeah.
You got to know who to root for, who to root against, and they do have to be a little bit over the top, a little bit flamboyant or obnoxious. So this is a little bit of edge. It's fun. Finally, James Harden has made it pretty clear he's trying to get out of Houston. He reportedly declined a contract extension that would have made him the first $50 million a year player in the NBA and is focused on being traded to the Brooklyn Nets. The Rockets and the Nets have reportedly been in contact, but there's not been any meaningful dialogue yet. Harden is under contract for multiple years, so Houston has the ability to slow play this process and flesh out offers and also try and change his mind. They want him to be there long term, but he wants to win a championship, so he's trying to get his way over to the Nets because he thinks that they have a window to win a title and he's trying to be there.
I will say, no league has more of its stars willing to give money back.
Can't say it's a money move.
It's not a money move, and I've seen that Kevin Durant gave up some money, and I've seen multiple players. Anthony Davis gave up some money.
LeBron, Wade, and Bosh gave up money when they teamed up in Miami. No one pays attention to that, but it's also a very unique league in that, well, most leagues now, big-time stars have a lot of endorsement deals, but, you know, you have crazy money with shoe contracts and things like that, so it becomes a little easier to sacrifice a, 10 or 20 million here or there when you're making 50 million a year on shoe contracts. I don't know what his contract is, but I will say this is fun for like I said, it's fun for us. It's fun for people to get to talk about the league. I don't really necessarily feel bad for Houston in this case. Like, Houston had an opportunity. They made moves to get stars and they couldn't get it done. I think there's plenty of fingers you can point at to make that case. I don't know if this works unless everyone buys in. To your point at the beginning of the show, while basketball is very much a star sport, you have to play your role. Yes. Like, yes, you need a star, you need a leader, you need the number one guy. But if everyone else buys into the role, you can absolutely win championships and have a dynasty. But you have to buy 100% into your role. And I think that has a lot to do with not only the stars buying in, but having a coach that can convince you that this is what's going to work. And if they can put that together, I think the Nets will be a problem. But that's a big if.
Yeah, Kevin Durant's the best player of the three. If Kevin did a little bit of a LeBron where he holds his teammates accountable, and if Kevin's healthy and hitting it, then I think they could potentially fall into place. Let's see Kevin post-injury, but Kevin's the best player of the three.
I think he's going to be fine post-injury. It's just a matter of what you want. Like, if you say you want to win a championship, then there's sacrifices that have to be made temporarily to win a championship.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
It's interesting. We were talking about so Drew Brees has got multiple fractured ribs, going to miss 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, it sounds like a month out. But I was saying is, Jameis Winston will now play, and we view Jameis as inconsistent. But Brady was the most consistent quarterback of my lifetime. Like you got the same crap every week. Last year, Brady in New England didn't have one game with multiple picks. He's already got 2 this year. Is that Bruce Arians? So were some of Jameis's issues Bruce Arians, who's a high-risk quarterback? And I went and looked this morning. So I'm not gonna talk about the teams, but look how inconsistent Brady's been. In week 1, he was bad. In week 2, he wasn't great. In week 3 and week 4, he was amazing. In week 5, he was bad against the Bears. In week 6, he was fine. Week 7, he was great. Week 8, he was really good. Week 9, he was awful. And then he was amazing last weekend. So he's got 2 terribles, 2 not very goods, 1 fine, and 4 greats. And so Brady is Mr. Consistent, and he's been wildly inconsistent this year. So Jameis, who we view as inconsistent, is that a Bruce Arians thing? Because if Tom's now inconsistent, what is Jameis if he goes to a much more, I would say, sort of efficient, detailed coach who will not tolerate... No risk it, no biscuit. That's an Arians saying. That's not a Sean Payton saying. So it's interesting. Chris Broussard's around the corner. We got some NBA stuff to talk about. Big deals happening potentially.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. Season 1 had some amazing guests, including YouTube sensation Liza Koshy and NBA All-Star Kevin Love.
Nothing robs us of more human potential than mental illness.
This season will have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes, including the amazingly talented Anthony Ramos.
How do we dig deeper in what we say as artists if we aren't digging deeper in our own lives?
TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio.
This time last year, I was on the bus to field hockey games. I didn't even do TikTok.
And to give back, my guests will also talk about a charity that's close to their hearts.
Oh, Sammy doing all this important work in the world. I'm saying 17, man, come on.
Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Nearly 600 years after the invention of the printing press, the most important book in the history of the world has arrived.
That might be overstating things.
Stuff you should know. An incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things. It will change your life forever.
Well,
that's not necessarily true.
Most scientists agree that Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, is proof that time travel is possible. Because that is the only way to explain how a book this impressive was possibly made.
What?
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, will regrow hair, whiten your teeth, and improve your love life.
That's just not at all right. Well, the love life part, maybe, if you find someone who thinks smart is sexy.
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, available for pre-order now at stuffyoushouldknow.com.
Now that is true.
Time to change up your wireless provider. Can use the same phone and number, but grab your phone, dial pound 250 and say my name, Colin Coward. It's Pure Talk USA, 2 gigs of data, $20 a month. Chris Broussard, co-host of The Odd Couple with Rob Parker on Fox Sports Radio, NBA dude for us, the guy we lean on, joining me now live. So, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant, it makes a good movie poster, but let's start with this. How in God's name, what can Houston get back? I mean, is this just one of those things that an agent throws out there, but can it happen?
Well, there's a few things to say about that. You mentioned an agent throwing it out there. People around the league are saying whoever put it out there, and it probably was agents. This goes for Harden and Westbrook. They did their clients a disservice because they made it that much harder for the Rockets to trade either one of these guys, because now teams know you got two disgruntled superstars on your hands. Where if the Rockets make a call to Team A and say, hey, we've been close, but we haven't gotten over the hump. We're thinking about going in a different direction. What would you give me for James Harden?
Right.
Now you're in control and you get a better package. And so that whoever put it out there has hurt the leverage of the Rockets. But as far as can this work, I was just talking with an executive an hour ago, Colin. What they're saying, the word around the league is, now I haven't heard this from Kyrie or anybody close to him, but people around the league are saying Durant wants Harden and Kyrie does not.
Oh boy.
All right, and because Harden would likely have the ball in his hands, right? Here's another thing for Kyrie to think about, or for those that are looking at his situation. Who is James Harden close with in the organization in Brooklyn? Mike D'Antoni, who was just hired as a coach for the Brooklyn Nets to assist Steve Nash. D'Antoni said James Harden is the best offensive player he's ever seen. D'Antoni, every offense he's created has had one guy handling the ball and creating the offense for everybody else. Who do you think he's giving the ball to in Brooklyn if they get James Harden?
Right.
It's Harden. And I don't see Kyrie wanting to be the third best player on a team. He's never been the third best player on the team.
Yeah.
And so it would be a chemistry experiment to the nth degree. Now, I gotta say this. As skeptical as I am about it being able to work, I mean, you'd have to give him a puncher's chance because that is some overwhelming individual talent.
Yeah.
But it would be a chemistry experiment of the most extreme order.
Yeah, I don't think Kyrie wants to hear in the huddle over and over again, hey, you're going to be a decoy here, Kyrie. We're going to set it up for Harden and Kevin Durant. I don't think that'd play well very long.
Set up in the right corner, Kyrie. Set up in the right corner.
I will say this. LeBron created player empowerment. I've always defended players who are mobile. You and I in our careers have been mobile. I think I'd be a hypocrite. But I do wonder, in the last 2 years, if this deal went through, Kevin Durant, Harden, Kyrie choose New York, AD, LeBron, Kawhi, Paul George choose Los Angeles. It feels very coastal. There are not a lot of stars if this goes through in the middle of the country. Is this good for the league?
Well, obviously, talking NBA like this in the off season is great for the league, right? Almost, if you want to call it hot stove like baseball, whatever. This is great. And it creates more storylines, and we get excited about it. If Harden were to go to Brooklyn, we can't wait to watch the Nets and see what that becomes. I also would say this, Colin. Right now, yeah, LA's is hot. Brooklyn is hot.
But I just think I even hesitate to say cyclical. It's just kind of the way it is these past few years. We could go back a few years and say LeBron chose Cleveland. We could say Westbrook chose to stay in Oklahoma City. Paul George chose Oklahoma City over the Lakers. So I think that I don't want to write off the small markets and say they can't get anybody and they're doomed. Nobody's choosing the Knicks, and that's the marquee market, in the country. So I won't go that far. What it is, and I'm with you, Colin. I'm for player movement, player empowerment. I never killed LeBron for creating super teams. Never killed KD for going to Golden State. But I'm going to be honest, there's a little bit of me that's just like, when I look at Brooklyn, and I can say the same thing about LeBron trying to go after Kawhi last year. You had Anthony Davis coming. Now you need Kawhi. and when I look at Brooklyn, I'm like, KD, you're great on paper. Not just Kyrie, who's awesome, but Jared Allen, Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, some really talented role players around you, and now you want to add James Harden. There's a sentiment, there's a little bit of you that's like, do dudes want to compete? I mean, really, like, we got to get every single star to play with us. It bothers me a little bit. I haven't killed those guys, and I won't. But I look back at a quote Jerry Krause had about Michael Jordan. He said he never came to me about trading for players. He never came to me about drafting players. He never came to me asking to add a player. He thought he was so darn good that he could win with anybody. There's a little of me that likes that. And I'm telling you, when you debate the GOAT, that comes up. So that's all I'll say about that.
That's okay. I don't necessarily disagree. So sometimes I see a trade. I remember years ago when I saw the Pau Gasol trade to the Lakers. I was on a plane on a tarmac, and I'm like, what? How did they get Pau Gasol? How did that work out? So now Dennis Schroeder is not Pau Gasol, but he's an 18-point-a-game guy. He's young. He's athletic. And reportedly he's going to the Lakers, and they're not giving up much. And I thought, what? That's kind of, it feels a little bit like a little steal for the Lakers here. I mean, Dennis Schroeder's a real player, right?
No question. There was talk, remember, they get DeMar DeRozan for Kuzma and Danny Green. And this is better. Well, obviously, you didn't have to give up Kuzma, but you also got, I think, a better fit in Dennis Schroeder, who shoots it well enough where he won't shrink the floor for LeBron and AD. We know they need spacing. He can create plays for himself and others off the dribble. He got a lot of swag to him, which I like. He showed in OKC playing with Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that he can play on the ball or off the ball. So I like it a lot. Colin, part of what I'm hearing is that if KD is saying, look, how are we going to beat those two studs with the Lakers, Anthony Davis and LeBron? And it's like, we need a third star that they don't have. And that's part of the impetus for all of this Harden talk. Because here's the thing, the Lakers are going to be better. Assuming LeBron doesn't fall off, and it's coming at some point, but assuming he has another year where he's a top the top player in the league or top 3 player in the league, Anthony Davis is going to be a lot better with the confidence from winning a championship, knowing he can get it done. And now you added Schroeder, who's better than Rajon Rondo at this stage. Yeah, Lakers going to be a handful.
Good stuff. Chris Broussard, Odd Couple, you and Rob Parker, weekdays 7 to 10 Eastern, Fox Sports Radio and iHeartRadio. It's great seeing you, bud.
You too, man. You too.
All right. It's wet out there in New Jersey. Stay dry. It's heating up in L.A. and it's getting wet in New Jersey. That Patriots-Ravens weather is just, it's all encompassing on the East Coast right now. Yeah, it's, it is funny about the whole player, like I can see people in Portland and Sacramento and Indiana, and we don't have our guys, but the reality is owners in the NBA, they don't want to give out like baseball, like 10-year contracts, because their fear is we give a guy 10 years, he didn't have to play hard. And unlike baseball, we don't have 162 games, right? We got a salary cap, we need our stars to play great. And so the NBA owners would rather, have shorter contracts. And then, NBA stars get, 1 year away from the end of their contract, and they're like, no, I want to move. Listen, it's no fun to play 82 games on a bad team. And I think James Harden looks at it and thinks, Westbrook wants out, and my coach, who, by the way, is a great offensive coach, is out, and the GM's a real sharp guy, and he is out, then it's...
I mean, you can also just have a really well-run organization and win that way, too. The Spurs have done it. They're not in a big market.
No, you can do it. You
can hire the right coach, and you can draft well. You have that option as well. You don't have to have superstars come in free agency.
And I also thought San Antonio got the right star. Like, Tim Duncan did not want... Tim Duncan's jeans T-shirt.
Draft accordingly. Draft personalities that fit within your organization. It's not really rocket science. Look at what the Warriors did. You can talk about Kevin Durant coming to the Warriors, but they drafted Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. You can actually build a winning organization in the NBA without having free agent stars come to you.
Yeah, the reason they could afford KD is because they paid Steph and KD, Klay Thompson. They didn't draft them number one.
That's what I'm saying. Cry me a river about stars moving around, or you can run your organization the right way.
Yeah, good stuff. Totally agree. John Johnson, Rams safety, Maxx Crosby, Raiders pass rusher extraordinaire, both join us last hour in the herd.
On September 17th, 2009, 24-year-old Mitrice Richardson disappeared without a trace in the woods near Malibu, California, and was never seen alive again. I'm Catherine Townsend, host of the podcast Hell and Gone. We're going to try to find out what really happened to Mitrice Richardson. School of Humans and iHeartRadio present Hell and Gone Season 3. Listen to Hell and Gone on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is partnering with iHeartRadio to bring you a brand new podcast series, Induction Vault. This show brings you back to the induction ceremonies for some of the most powerful moments on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stage, featuring inspiring speeches direct from the artists themselves. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Induction Vault. Available now with new episodes every Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
My name is Jamie Loftus, and I'm here to tell you about my new show, Lolita Podcast. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov is one of the most controversial works of all time, and our culture has done its protagonist a huge disservice over the years. I've spent the last few months getting to the bottom of how America turned this abused young girl into a sex symbol and what that says about us. New episodes drop weekly on Mondays starting November 23rd. Listen to Lolita Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
This is Fight Night, a new podcast from iHeartRadio.
They thought he had robbed the deadliest man in this country. Guys who would not hesitate to blow your head off.
This story from Atlanta, Georgia, has been reported for 50 years. But now, for the first time, you're going to hear what really happened from the people who lived it. Listen and follow Fight Night on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Pure Talk USA, unlimited text, unlimited talks, 2 gigs of data, $20 a month. Grab your mobile phone, dial pound 250 and say my name, Colin Coward. That'll get you 50% off the first month. Pure Talk USA. The Rams have allowed, the LA Rams, you think of them as an offensive football team. They are carried by their defense. They give up 4.7 yards a play this year. Number 1 in the NFL, yards per play. That's a huge stat in Vegas. That's a big stat. They've also given up 1 touchdown the entire season in the fourth quarter. And I think a huge component to it is, I think they have the best secondary in the league. Jon Johnson III is a Rams safety, went to the same university as our buddy Will Blackman, Boston College. He is now joining us live via the Coward Global Satellite Network. So it's interesting, you're a young guy, you come in this league, you haven't missed a snap this year, total baller, but you play alongside Jalen Ramsey, who was the number 1 high school corner. He was the number 1 college corner. He may be the only time in your life where you've played with a guy who's as good as you. And, when your first thought, playing alongside Jalen Ramsey, what separates him from, I mean, you've been the best DB on every team you've ever played on. What separates him?
I mean, you know what you're getting with him. Like, he gonna bring that confidence, he gonna bring that swag, he gonna bring that energy, the big plays, and he just makes my job a lot easier. I know that. You know, he gonna lock down his side. You know, sometimes I'm like, hey, Jalen, you want me? Nope, I don't need it. He don't need my help. So, I mean, he makes my job a lot easier. I can condense the field, but it's just really his swag and confidence that pushes him over the top.
So it's interesting because you are a young guy and you just keep getting better, and they have a defensive back coach with the Rams that most of the public, Aubrey Pleasant, doesn't know about. And it's, to me, when I look at the Rams, I don't look at Jalen Ramsey. I look at all you young corners and safeties, and you're all getting better and better and better. So what kind of defensive back coach, because he's obviously been great for you, what didn't you know that he's taught you? How do you improve? What has coaching done for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, his personality is bigger than a lot of people imagine. That's like you said. But for Coach AP, it's just all technique. Him and Coach Evero, it's just all technique. That's what it always comes down to. You wouldn't be in the NFL if you didn't have talent, if you didn't have ability. So it's just really locking in on the basics, the fundamentals, and that's what's going to bring you home in those big games, especially like crunch time in the fourth quarter, playing technique. Be true to yourself, being real disciplined. That's what Coach AP preaches all the time.
So, Russell Wilson, you get to face him twice a year, which the good is you at least know what he brings. The bad is you face him twice a year. So this was his worst performance against you. When you face Russell Wilson, like, what's the challenge for you, Jon, individually? What's the worst part about that?
You got to worry about guys getting behind you. You got to worry about plays going on for 8-9 seconds. You got to worry about him taking off and running. Guys, their back turner, you don't see him. So all those things create problems for us, and those are the things that we attack during the week that we are conscious of, that we're aware of during the week to try to slow him down. But it is hard. It's hard to completely shut him down. The best you can do is try to slow him down, especially on an MVP front-running season that he's having.
Yeah. Okay, then there's Kyler Murray. So a lot of people compare the two, but Kyler's actually faster is in terms of a runner. When you play Kyler, do you basically think the same way as you do when you face Russell?
I don't think so. I think Russell, he's more of a scramble to throw type of guy. I think Kyler will actually take off and run on you. And they have design runs for him. I don't think they have too many design runs for Russell. So that's just the biggest difference, and it's going to take a lot of discipline during that week, that practice week, to prepare for him. I haven't watched too much tape. Last year I got hurt and missed 10 games, so it'll be a challenge for sure. But I think he's definitely more of a flat-out runner than Russell is.
When Aaron Donald has been voted the best player in the NFL several times, and obviously you don't have to go up against them in practice, but take me back to the first time you saw Aaron Donald, and it was probably at practice. And you play with pros. I mean, everybody around you all day is a great athlete. When was the first time you watched Aaron Donald and just went, oh my Lord, this doesn't even look the same?
You know what's crazy? I have a crazy story. So my rookie year, when I first got in, he was holding out. It was his contract time. So there was no OTAs. There were no. I think he came a few days just to be with the guys, be with the players, but he missed most of training camp, pretty much all of training camp. He missed week 1 against the Colts. I'm pretty sure he did. So it was really that Redskins game where I was like, oh man, I see why he wanted his money first before he's playing. We make jokes in the locker room like he doesn't get blocked unless he wants to get blocked. So and that's it, practice or game. So you can put 2-3 guys on him. I mean, he's just unbelievable. And thank God he's on my team.
Yeah. Hey, so you played Tom Brady. You get an extra day of prep. You played Tom Brady. So when will you, Jon, start diving in on the film of Brady and really start breaking it down?
Right after I get off this call. I know our coaching staff, I'm going to go to the facility today as well, but I know they're already working on it, but we won't install it as a team until tomorrow, but I'm definitely going to take a look at what they're doing. They just got Antonio Brown. They got a lot of guys that can make plays on offense, so definitely want to get ahead on them, and it's an extra day. We play them on Monday, so we should be well prepared for that game. We just got to get our bodies going, and we've seen Tom before in a Super Bowl game. We did pretty well against him, so we just got to see what the differences are with Bruce Arians and go from there.
By the way, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, AB, you guys, it's the best secondary with the Rams against the best receiving corps for the Rams. And, finally, Sean McVay is a offensive guy, and he always comes across as so likable. Does McVay ever bark at practice? Has he ever screamed at you? Or is he always a nice guy? Because he always comes across such a nice guy. Does he bark ever?
All the time. he's at work. See, look, they got a picture here being nice just before practice, but if his offense isn't firing how they're supposed to be firing, if they're making mistakes that he can't live with, he's barking for sure. He's gonna make sure everything is nice and neat, everything is as he designed it, as he pictured it, and whatever's best for the team going against the other team for the week. So he's definitely a perfectionist. He's like a mad scientist when it comes to this offense, man. So he's definitely wants his way, and he's going to bark at you if it's not the way he wants it.
All right, finally, you face Kyler Murray and Brady 2 of the next 3 weeks, but I want to ask you about Andrew Whitworth. Great left tackle, top 4 or 5 left tackle in football. Jared Goff needs his left tackle. What do you think on... Now, Whitworth, I think, is going to come back this year, right?
That's what it looks like. Hopefully we can get him back, but I mean, it's just a big loss. I think Whitworth, this is year 15. He was probably having one of the best years of his career. I don't think he's giving up a sack this year. So, I mean, I just hate to see him go down. He's a big leader on our team. Everybody can look up to Big Whit on and off the field. So, it's a big loss. Hopefully, we can get him back. But I know one thing. He's going to be engaged at practice, and he's going to get whoever replaces him on the right track to replace what he did. So, I hate to see him go down, but I know he's still going to be present in that locker room.
John Johnson III from Hyattsville, Maryland, went to school out there, then BC, and they're happy to have him in L.A. with the Rams. Appreciate you coming on the show, bud. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. This is one of my favorite shows on TV. Appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate it. John Johnson of the Rams. Right now, their secondary is stacked, and they face Brady on Monday Night Football, and then 2 weeks later, they face Kyler Murray. So you get the pocket guy and the most elusive guy along with Lamar Jackson in the league. So it's a real challenge. But the Rams, they have really, in the last year, totally, all their draft picks in the secondary, they all hit. They can all play. They're all elite, all of them.
Hi, I'm Holly Fry. And I'm Tracy V. Wilson. And together we host a show called Stuff You Missed in History Class. As the name suggests, we talk about some things that maybe either you didn't remember from history class or they weren't covered at all. There have always been women in history. There have always been black people and other people of color. There have always been people all over the LGBTQIA spectrum as a part of the historical record. Tracy, we've had some really interesting episodes recently. What's one of your favorites?
The history of beekeeping, which we had to abridge because that's very involved. How about you?
I really enjoyed researching our episode on Seneca Village, which was a settlement in what became Central Park that was mostly populated by black people who actually owned the property there, and unfortunately their time there was kind of erased.
So if this kind of material sounds good to you, come listen to the show. We have new episodes on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then a behind-the-scenes minisode on Friday, and a bonus classic episode from the archive on Saturday.
You can find us on the iHeartRadio app, at Apple Podcasts, or wherever it is you listen.
Hey, my name's Katie Stoll.
My name's Cody Johnston.
And I'm Robert Evans.
We're here today to promote our show, Worst Year Ever, a podcast where we talk about 2020, aka the worst year ever. Our purview is wide and bleak. We talk about the election. We talk about the administration. We talk about protests. Other things, too, which my co-hosts will now describe to you.
We talk about how to survive a horrible state violence. We talk about how to fight Nazis as part of a community. And we talk about, election stuff with the politics and things.
If you love politicians, you'll tolerate this show. Listen to Worst Year Ever on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joy Taylor with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, we haven't talked Cowboys in a while, so why not?
Oh, what happened now?
The Cowboys are in line to get Andy Dalton back this week. He returned to practice as a full participant Monday after clearing both concussion and COVID protocols. Mike McCarthy said they're taking it one day at a time to see if Dalton will be ready to start Sunday against the Vikings, but he did say that Dalton looks good in his first practice back. He is, so far this season, 61.2 completion percentage, 452 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions.
Yeah, I mean, they're good at right tackle, but they got, we were talking about this, Goulet and I were talking about this because he's the resident Cowboy homer. So they have, right now, clearly the Jets and the Jags are the 2 worst teams.
Right.
They're going to take quarterbacks. The third pick, I mean, if you start looking at it, I think Washington's is better than Dallas.
Right now, yeah.
But I think, I don't see wins for Dallas. I don't think they'll beat Washington, which is the easy game on their schedule. So they're going to pick third. They mostly don't need what's available. Like the top of the draft is quarterbacks, a great left tackle. So what do the Cowboys do? Because Jerry doesn't want to give up that third pick. Jerry likes high picks. The Cowboys get talked about. Jerry loves headlines. What do the Cowboys do with that third pick? We're glommed on to all these quarterbacks. They're not taking one, right? He likes Dak. So there's a great left tackle at Oregon, Sewell. But they have Tyron Smith, who gives you about 10 to 12 games a year. Do you take him, still pay Tyron for 2 or 3 years? I mean, seriously, you've got to start getting cheaper on that offense.
Yeah.
Because you got to pay Dak, you pay Zeke, you pay Amari, you pay Tyron Smith, you pay Zach Martin. To me, you go offense with your. Everybody thinks their defense need help. They got to get cheaper on offense.
Well, I mean, their defense does need a lot of help. They need a lot of help, period. But I don't know. If you look at their schedule, if Andy Dalton's back.
Oh, it's bad.
I mean, they're the Vikings this week.
They're not beating the Vikings. No way.
And then they have Washington. That could go either way.
I like Washington. Then what's
I would lean Washington too, but it's still a division game.
What's
then
that?
They have the Ravens.
Loss.
Bengals.
Loss.
49ers.
Probably a loss.
I mean, I think
Garoppolo's
Bengals,
back.
Niners, Washington could go either way. Then you have the Eagles. I mean, I think the Eagles are better right now, but they're still not playing well. And then they have the Giants. Like, if the Cowboys could mess around and win a couple of these games and not be as high as they need to be, it's just that division is so awful. It's. Yeah. I mean, the wild card's obviously dead in it, but it's getting Dalton back could kind of change that. So Kyler Murray scored 2 more rushing touchdowns Sunday, giving him 10 for the season. That puts him on pace to finish the season with 18, which would set the record for the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback.
Yeah.
Cam Newton currently holds the record with 14 in the 2011 season.
Cam was a power runner. Kyler's a speed runner.
Cordell Stewart. Remember that year?
Name from the past. Yeah.
Right. So Cam Newton has 14 in 2011. Steve Grogan with 12, 1976. Cordell, 97, had 11. Cam also had a high number of 10 in 2015. Dante Culpepper in 2002. And right now, Kyler Murray in 2020 has 10. On pace to finish with 18.
He doesn't get hit.
Yes.
That's the difference. Cam was a power runner who... You can go back and look at some of those early hits. I think they almost altered rules.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say, Cam, I think, was a big catalyst for the rules changing on how you can hit a quarterback.
And also, Cam was so uniquely big at quarterback, it reminded me of when Shaq played. NBA officials did not really know how to officiate Shaq games for years. Guys would be hanging on Shaq, and they wouldn't call it. Cam was so big that officials just let guys go high on him because it's like, well, he's 6'6". He was bigger than the defenders, and it was like, and after a while, Cam's like, these are illegal hits.
Oh, it got ridiculous. It got to the because you
remember it was the game in he ran for an end zone, and it was about the goal line.
Yeah,
is he against Denver?
I know what you're
and like 3 guys hit him high, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, it was the point where everyone was like, okay,
that's not
like he's big, but he's still a quarterback.
I think it was against.
Ridiculous.
It was against. I think it was in the corner by the pylon.
Yeah,
he got smoked, I think, by Denver, and you're like, you wouldn't allow that with any other quarterback in the league.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. Finally, the Jets will once again be without Sam Darnold this week. He's still dealing with a right shoulder injury, so Joe Flacco will get the start this Sunday against the Chargers. Gase said he's confident Darnold will be back at some point this season, but he wants to make sure he's 100% before he comes back.
I'll throw this at you. They know they're going to trade him.
So they don't want him to get injured.
They don't want him to get hurt.
Yeah.
This is what it feels like. I'm not saying Sam's 100%, but boy, whenever there's a doubt they don't play him, it's like, are they just protecting him? By the way, they know the team's bad, so why put him out there and he looks lousy and struggles and loses, instead get him healthy?
No, it hurts his value.
The last couple times we've seen him, we think he's pretty good. He finished strong at the end of last year, and somebody gives you a first-round pick, not a second-round pick.
Well, in the race to the top of this current NFL draft, obviously it's Jets in first place at 0-9, then the Jags, Washington, Cowboys, and the Chargers. So the Jets' remaining schedules at the Chargers and the Dolphins, Raiders, at Seahawks, at Rams, Browns, and at Patriots. So pretty brutal schedule. Maybe the Patriots is the most evenly matched, and that's a stretch to even say that. Then the Jags' remaining schedules: Steelers, Browns, at Vikings, Titans, at Ravens, Bears, Colts.
I've got to tell you, the Chargers, if the Chargers get another top 5 or 6 pick, that team that's a good roster. They're just got a young quarterback and a coach right now.
I thought they were going to be a lot better than they were this year.
So did I. Yeah.
But it may work in their favor to get another high pick.
How about the Dolphins getting another great pick?
Well, yeah, because they have the pick from the Texans.
Now the Dolphins are interesting because they have to rebuild their offensive line, but they took a left tackle, Austin Jackson, in the first round last year, so they probably wouldn't go left tackle. Or would they, and move Austin Jackson over to the right tackle spot, where he's not as much a power blocker?
I could see them going offensive line there.
I could too, but
I could also see them moving down and getting some extra picks.
Boy, they're well run right now. Yeah. It's amazing when you get the right coach in. I never thought well run. Jimmy Johnson left, and I didn't think well run for the Dolphins until last year, like 15 years.
It's very nice, yeah. It's very comfortable.
Yeah, enjoy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Live News.
It is interesting. So think about you never know what you're going to get out of college, right? You just don't know. Is a coach going to be great? Tom Coughlin, nobody thought we thought he was a, Boston College guy. He beat Notre Dame when they were number 1. He went to Jacksonville, and all of a sudden you look up and he's beaten Belichick in Super Bowls twice and Brady. But it looks like Brian Flores is a hit. Joe Judge, early indications are like the players are totally, they get better every week. Cliff Kingsbury, it's working. I mean, I don't know if he's great, but it's working. I think Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. I think Joe Burrow's, again, offensively, I think it's working. Matt LaFleur's obviously winning a bunch of games in Green Bay. So, like, a lot of these young guys, it's working. I'm trying to think of another young coach. Sean McDermott in Buffalo's on a run. Matt Rule, I think Matt Rule's done a great job. They need players. We always knew this. They needed 2 drafts to rebuild the defense. And they're not paying Bridgewater a ton, so they can go spend some money next year on defense. They drafted actually well on the defensive side. So, by the way, Chris Broussard, James Harden wants to go to Houston. We'll see. Chris Broussard earlier, an interesting nugget about what he's hearing in regards to a potential James Harden to a Brooklyn trade.
What they're saying, the word around the league is, now I haven't heard this from Kyrie or anybody close to him, but people around the league are saying Durant wants Harden and Kyrie does not.
Uh-oh. That's not great. That's not good. Because, to me, it'll be very fun to watch. Or you could make this argument. If Kevin Durant wants him, and James Harden's the second best player, so KD and Harden are there together, and they've got some other nice pieces, does it force Kyrie to be on his best behavior? Because if Kevin Durant wants Harden, they're going to get Harden, and they may move Kyrie Irving, which I never liked KD going from the maturity of Steph to the inconsistent personality of Kyrie. So that's interesting. So Broussard's here, and the KD wants Harden. I would too. I would be a little reluctant on Kyrie Irving. I'm not reluctant at all on Harden. Harden will show up and drop 30 a night. Like, Harden loves basketball. He never misses games. James, for all of the misgivings people have had about Harden in the playoffs, plays hard every night, never skips games, works hard at practice. That's not the issue with him. I don't think, he doesn't give you great effort on the defensive end, and I think that ball-centric style can wear people out. But if Kevin Durant wants Harden, maybe it keeps Kyrie Irving on his best behavior, because I believe today KD's the best of the 3, Harden's a semi-close second. He hadn't had the injuries of KD. Maxx Crosby of the Raiders. The Raiders are interesting and good again. He's their best pass rusher. He'll be joining us live next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
I knew they were going to kill him. Please send FBI. This is Fight Night, a new podcast from iHeartRadio. This is the story about 2 guys from opposite sides of the street. A hustler blamed for robbing the most dangerous gangsters in the country,
This is a death warrant for me for something that I don't even know anything about.
And the cop who tried to save his life.
They thought he had robbed the deadliest man in this country. Guys who would not hesitate to blow your head off.
In 1970, Muhammad Ali triumphantly returned to the ring. At the Hustlers party that followed, gangsters from around the country were robbed of $1 million. This story from Atlanta, Georgia, has been reported for 50 years. But now, for the first time, you're going to hear what really happened from the people who lived it. Listen and follow Fight Night on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
My name is Jamie Loftus, host of shows like My Year in Mensa and the Bechtelcast. I'm here to tell you about my new show, Lolita Podcast. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov is one of the most controversial works in American history. The story and its main character have been adapted, misinterpreted, and twisted over the years by Hollywood, by fashion, by fans of the book, and by the author themselves. Lolita has gone from the tragic story of an abused 13-year-old girl to a cultural narrative that frames her as the seductress and to blame. So how did this all happen? It's a messy story. This is a story about a girl named Dolores, and I think she's gotten lost over the years. I'll be speaking with literary scholars, with experts on abuse, and with the actresses who have played the part of Lolita and more. So let's get to the bottom of it, for her, Mondays starting November 23rd. Listen to Lolita Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Maxx Crosby. This is why the NFL is so great. So Maxx Crosby is just fantastic. And he's from like Rochester, Michigan. So you would think, oh, he played for Michigan. No, they didn't recruit him. Oh, Michigan State. No, they didn't recruit him. He goes to Eastern Michigan. And he's the best defensive lineman for the Raiders. And his stats are fantastic. They forced 5 turnovers. And he's in Vegas, baby. And we love Vegas on this show. Maxx Crosby, Raiders defensive end, is joining us live from Vegas. So, good Lord. First of all, it's great to have you on. And, I'm sitting there thinking, nobody offered you. So how many offers did you get out of high school?
I had one. It was Eastern Michigan. It's funny. Being from Michigan, I would think somebody would want me, but I didn't get anybody. So, Eastern was the only one, and they offered me, and I was expecting maybe some more offers, but they were the only one, so I committed right away.
It feels like honestly, Max, it feels like Gruden and the Raiders are a good fit for you and your personality. And I'm not there every day, but give me your relationship with Gruden. I mean, Gruden's a tough guy and he's a fighter, and you're obviously a fighter to go to Eastern Michigan and end up as a great NFL player. What is Gruden like to play for?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Oakland, now the Las Vegas Raiders are, it's just a perfect fit for me and my personality. We're hard-nosed, and Gruden loves guys like that. He wants guys that love football, and, that's everything I am. It's an awesome, organization. It's fun, and we have a lot of fun, and it's laid back, but when it's time to work, they're on it. They push me personally every day to my limits, and I know they do that with everybody else. So it's an awesome environment to be around, and we're really just having fun and trying to be the best we can be.
Well, you're winning, and that's all I know. By the way, you're kind of a power football team. You run the ball, you get after it. Now, Vegas can be distracting. As a young guy from cold weather Michigan, and you got a beautiful girlfriend, and you go to Vegas. Do you go to the casinos ever? You all football? I mean, what's it like to live there for a young guy?
Yeah, I moved here in February, so I kind of got to see the town for the first time, and it was awesome. It's beautiful. There's a lot going on all the time, but for me personally, especially with this COVID going on, and everybody's got to be safe, and nobody wants to miss games. I literally have the same routine every day. I come home, I eat good, I hang out with the dogs and my girl, and we just relax. So it's not like I'm living on the strip. I'm far away from that, so I'm definitely ducked off and just having a good time and relaxing.
So you're in a division now with Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes. When you guys beat, and nobody else is doing this, you beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Take me inside inside a little bit what it is like to play with Mahomes. Is he talkative? Does he audible a lot? Is he a trash talker? What is it like to face Mahomes, the world's best football player, many believe now?
Yeah, I believe that too. He's a once in a lifetime type talent. The guy, he doesn't really talk much. He's super focused when he's on the field, but the way he plays is just so much different than any other quarterback you face. It's just like when you play the Chiefs, it's not like a regular football game. You're going to be running for your life trying to get him down. He's trying to extend plays, trying to make, underneath passes, behind the back. He'll literally do anything. So he's a different type of player. And, every time we play KC, we know it's going to be a crazy game.
So last time you beat him, and I thought this story was hysterically funny. It's so Raiders, it's so Gruden, it's perfect. So you guys drive the bus around the victory lap thing, and Gruden, it's so funny. So Gruden was asked about it yesterday. I got to play this bite of Gruden getting all pissy. Here's Gruden yesterday at the press conference. Here he is.
Hey, John. Today, Andy Reid mentioned a couple times the victory lap you guys took in KC for the first game. What exactly was the victory lap, and was that something that you think about this week as far as more material or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, you can find a smart aleck bus driver in Kansas City who made some snide comments when we got on the bus. Maybe that's why we drove around the stadiums to tick him off. This is ridiculous. Next question.
I mean, so can you won't get in trouble. What happened? Can you tell me the story?
I honestly, it's funny. After the game, we were all so fired up. Obviously winning in KC is very rare, and especially with that team, it's a big deal anytime you beat them. So on the bus, I noticed when we took off, we were like, nobody said anything like, yeah, we're taking a victory lap, blah blah blah. I just noticed we were driving around the stadium because we were just going in a big circle. So honestly, a lot of the guys, we had no idea. So we were just noticing. We're like, wait, like, where are we going? We were just going in circles. So I don't know. I honestly don't know the backstory at all. And it is what it is. People are trying to make it bigger than it is.
The media, that's what we do. So you have 16 sacks in 25 games. You're a very, you're an emotional guy. You get after it. Can a defensive lineman be a leader? And by the way, when you're young, I mean, you're a kid still in this league. Is it okay? Like, do you like the leadership thing?
Yeah, absolutely. A D lineman definitely can be a leader. We're in the trenches. We're going toe to toe with the biggest guys and strongest dudes on the field at all times. So, being a young guy, I feel like that was something I struggled with a little bit last year. As far as a leadership standpoint, but this year, me and Cleveland and the rest of the guys, our defense is a bunch of young guys trying to, generate, pressure and generate a new type of football that, is just hard nosed and gritty and play to the end of the whistle. And that's something I'm trying to do, be a part of that and help the guys any way I can.
Boy, your speed is incredible. You just don't play like most defensive linemen. You're fast. Has there been, obviously, it's funny, you play at Eastern Michigan. That's nothing against the league you were in, but the offensive linemen aren't quite as good as the AFC West. Who has been the best offensive lineman you faced?
Ooh, that's tough. In the last 2 years, I feel like David Bakhtiari is definitely up there. We played him in Green Bay last year. I think Taylor Lewan, Larry Tunsil. There's a bunch of guys I could name, but you're not wrong when you say that. There's every week, that's the biggest difference. Coming from the NFL to college, it's like college, who you're playing this week, like, oh, it's about to be one of those weeks. But in the NFL, everybody's good, and there's guys that are athletic, that are 320 pounds and 6'7". Like, you just don't see that in the MAC. So, the talent is incredible in this league. So it's always awesome, to get up for a challenge like that.
Were you worried a little bit when you came from a smaller school? Take me to your first practice, because you're Eastern Michigan. You go to the NFL first practice. Was there a moment, Maxx, when you're like, okay, I can play in this league? I know I can play in this league.
Yeah, 100%. Coming from the MAC, we always played like a Kentucky or like a in Illinois or Purdue during the season. So I always had big games against the Power 5 team. So I was confident. I wasn't worried. But when I first came to training camp, I saw Trent Brown lined up at right tackle, and nobody wanted to go against him. And I was like, I'm going to take it on, as a challenge, to try to beat him. If I could beat him one time, I know I can win in this league. So I was going against him every single day. And this dude is 6'8", 6'9", 400 pounds. He's a different animal that I've ever gone against. So the first time I beat him, I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, this is easy. If I can beat Trent, I can beat anybody. So that's always been my mentality. I always think about going against Trent when I first got in the NFL, and that gives me a ton of confidence.
Well, it's great meeting you. The Raiders are a great story. I'm old enough, and I still think I'm pretty young, but I go back to the Raiders when they had Kenny Stabler and John Madden. It's an incredible tradition. Vegas is a perfect fit. And I think the whole Jon Gruden thing is just. By the way, when they drafted you, did Gruden get on the phone? Hey, Maxx, it's Gruden. Did he get on the phone when he drafted you?
Oh yeah, 100%. The first thing he said is, "I need you to get Mahomes. We need you to get Phillip Rivers and all that." And I was like, "All right, let's go." I was like, "I got this. Let's do it." And it was hilarious. So you know how Gruden is. He always loves challenging his players, and I love it. He's one of a kind.
Easy guy to root for. Maxx, good luck to you and the Raiders, my friend. Thanks for coming on the show. Good luck to you, your girlfriend, your 3 dogs, which you locked up for 5 minutes so we could hear you on the air. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
All right, Maxx Crosby, Raiders defensive. That is so Gruden. Hey, Maxx, I need you to get after Phillip Rivers. Patrick Mahomes, Maxx, you got to get after it. But it is. You play in the MAC, and all of a sudden your first practice, you're against a Pro Bowler, 380-pound, 6'9" tackle. Like it really is. It really is amazing.
It is really fascinating when you think about physically having to do that, even at his size, and he's massive.
When you watch his video, he's so fast.
Yeah, he's very fast.
Like when you watch the Aaron Donald's strong. We all know that. But Aaron Donald. They'll send tapes out. You can get it on YouTube. When you watch Aaron Donald's feet, watch how fast this guy is for his size. Now, this is a 270-pound player. Now, watch him right here. I mean, he is on you fast. He can. And there's not that many.
This is the one. It's like, where did he come from? It's amazing.
Yeah. No. His speed, his closing is 1 second. He is on you, and it's great to see. Good for the Raiders. We all face a lot of opposition, none more than age. Check out M-Drive Start. Every morning, 1 scoop. Proteins, vitamins, minerals, digestive enzymes for elite nutrition. Do not let age define you. MDriveStart.com. We had a good show today.
Very fun.
Peter King, Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly, he likes me. John Johnson, Maxx Crosby, and Chris Broussard. It was fun to get a couple NFL dudes on today. We got nice guys, too.
Yes.
Good dudes. John Johnson III for the Rams, baller, and Maxx Crosby. All right. Let's go, Maxx. Get Mahomes. Get it, baby.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. This season, we'll have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes. Guests include the amazing singer and actor Anthony Ramos, TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio, NBA star Aaron Gordon, and many more. Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
My name is Jamie Loftus, and I'm here to tell you about my new show, Lolita Podcast. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov is one of the most controversial works of all time, and our culture has done its protagonist a huge disservice over the years. I've spent the last few months getting to the bottom of how America turned this abused young girl into a sex symbol and what that says about us. New episodes drop weekly on Mondays starting November 23rd. Listen to Lolita Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.